This is K8BYP playing HVAC tech and still chasing the problem of why this unit cuts out compressor and fan on cooling about 10 seconds in. Seems to work fine in heat pump, although one time it did drop out. But I isolated it down to the low pressure cutout opening about 10 seconds into the cycle. Then afterwards it'll occasionally close and reopen. That could be a bad switch, low pressure cutout switch. Not a very old unit, probably not that. It could be a sealed system overpressure. I couldn't correlate why it was happening in AC until I looked at the pressure charts. And bang, there it was. And that chart is in the documentation that's inside that cover, or should be. But the pressure, temperature, indoor, outdoor temperatures and pressures chart shows that the system pressures on the low side are much, I think it's the low side, are much higher in cooling. In heating, down to like 5 degrees outside, it's like 40 psi up to, I don't remember, 100 maybe. And in cooling, it goes upwards of 140 or 150 some. So restriction on this outdoor coil would definitely screw the system pressures up. And I'm thinking, since I can't find anything else broken, that's got to be it. I've owned this unit 7 years, never cleaned it, so shame on me. But I've been studying online information, mostly on the HVAC forums and from the technicians about cleaning these coils. It's universally wrong. I finally stumbled across a document on cleaning these spine fin coils. This is spine fin, the little bristles. Very fragile. But there's a site for maintenance engineers that says some useful information on it, and more importantly, they say that, contrary to the advice on the forums, which say don't ever bend in those fins in, those spines, they say if they're mashed in, it only makes a small difference in cooling capacity. So don't get excited, but don't do this to them, because this is just gross abuse. Somebody not paying attention, putting a cover on, and they've bent that clear down to the coil. So don't do that. That's extremely bad work. See right there? That's going to compromise some airflow. But what I found is that the proper thing to use, contrary to the forum advice by the forum experts, is a spray bottle. There's good advice against not dumping a pressure washer in here, because that will mash the fins up badly. But that spray bottle gives off a high velocity, a high pressure spray of very small droplets. And as I'm spraying it, and I'll spray some here so you can see it, you might be able to see that the spray completely penetrates the coil. Some people have suggested flooding it with one of these hose end deals. That's a massive overkill. And that does it a more diluted spray. What I do is I put in, that's simple green there. That's not what I'm using. What I'm using, I can't tell you because it's industrial only, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. But it works a whole lot better. You'll also be up a creek if you breathe it. So I'm not going to disclose that. But while that spray bottle puts in much less cleaner, I'm putting what I'm using in at about 50% concentration. And that's pretty highly concentrated even with water. But that spray is high velocity, and those droplets penetrate in through those spines, spray straight on. There's 2 layers of coils in there. You've got to spray and clean both. You can see them there, one outside and one inside. Pay special attention to the coil up underneath there. There's a foam piece up here to block air. But on the right side, there's a coil up there, and you can't see it unless you get down and look up, so you got to remember to clean it. So spray half a bottle in just this face, maybe a little more, and go slowly and spray evenly, like this. And watch the spray penetrate. Good long like that. Start at the top, go to the bottom, doesn't make much difference. It all ends up at the bottom anyway. Rinse it with this. This works extremely well. It's across a 100-foot garden hose, but this gives a modest spray that it's not too strong. It penetrates really well. And see you can probably see a little bit of color to what's running off. That's the cleaner I just sprayed in. Rinse it until it runs clear. Don't leave these chemicals in place, and especially don't use anything with much of a pH. Don't use acids or bases. These coils, these spines are aluminum. Aluminum oxidizes severely. Aluminum takes 2 oxide coatings, a thin layer and a gross layer. Taking that oxide layer off removes aluminum. There's a published figure on material attrition on these coils each time they're cleaned. It's something like ½ ounce of aluminum disappears. Taking it off, yes, will increase heat transfer for a few minutes or hours or days, but it's just aluminum is extremely reactive. It's going to regrow the same coating again. You've just pretty much wasted your time with caustics or etchants to remove it, so don't do it. It'll eventually cause loss of these fins. In fact, there's one HVAC site where someone said he looked at a unit where the dog had routinely peed on it and destroyed the coil because urine contains uric acid. Only an idiot would work on this with the power turned on. It can be done. I do it, not with a garden hose, but I work on it with the power on. Of course, I got to see it operate. But for this operation, you got to take the fan out of the top, and to get inside to clean the inside compartment, there's sticks and leaves and such inside, and the spray from the outside won't thoroughly penetrate the inside, or vice versa. So you got to spray with a cleaner and wait and rinse inside and outside of all 4 faces. But I'll get rid of most of that green mold just for appearance sake. Just looks better. Doesn't really do anything for heating or cooling. On this Trane unit, watch out for those 2 wires there. That's the I think that's the outdoor temperature sensor, ODS. It's attached near the coil back in there, but it's a black wires, and I think that's listed as ODS on the wiring diagram. Make sure that these wires in the compressor house aren't pulling down, because it was doing so and pushing these up into the fins. So make sure there's clearance there so the fins can't cut through the insulation. And of course, make sure you don't wash it down with any of these covers, these exterior covers off. These things come out by taking out the screws, 3 screws above them, here are 4 screws. And to remove them without damaging the fins, lift all the way up, tilt out, and then slide down. To reinstall, tilt it out, push all the way up in, and down. There's a hook. There are 2 hooks on each side that hold it in place before the screws are put in. But only open one of these panels at a time. That just prevents, I don't know, some kid from hitting a baseball and hitting one of the exposed fins, or accidentally flipping the garden hose into it and mashing the fins. And of course, with all these HVAC parts, they are extremely sharp. It's easy to get sliced open, especially on the plate fins on the indoor coil. It'll cut you to ribbons if you stick your hands in it, so don't do that. Blood does not help heat transfer. Clean these plastic guards thoroughly. That's mainly for appearance. But if the unit's clean, that just suggests you've done maintenance, and that's good. After rinsing this thoroughly, don't leave these things sit with water. Water is corrosive. Water contains H+ ions, which are acidic. So as soon as possible after it's done, reinstall the fan assembly in the top and fire the unit up. The time it takes to reinstall the fan is going to let most of the water drain out of these coils. When water is not ponding on here, most of it's gone. And of course, these areas are made for airflow and heat transfer. The breeze I'm in right now, which you can't hear, is going to naturally help dry them. You can see a little drip there. Another thing to watch out for is that to remove the top fan takes removing this compartment and disconnecting the 3-position white plug right in here. So don't try to lift that fan up and twist it around and take it out. So that's about it. KBYP dit dit.